Today we're going to keep things simple and we're going to be looking at a front end which is designed for you minimalists out there. Let's take a look at Cannoli. So today we're going to be looking at Cannoli, and Cannoli is very, very minimal. If you used something like MinUI or NextUI, this will be very familiar to you. So as always, firstly we're going to go to Obtainium and we're going to go to our front end section and we're just going to grab Cannoli. So welcome to Cannoli. So we're going to go through the little setup wizard. It's pretty straightforward, and then we are going to look at some of the weird little quirks of Cannoli and we'll see how everything all looks. Firstly, just a word of warning, these button prompts are back to front, so we actually want to press B to grant access, because if you press the A button it will just quit out. We can change these once we get into Cannoli, but not by default. If you're using an SD card, then you can just flick that over to your SD card. My SD card's called Thor, as you can see there, or you can just leave it on your internal storage, which is what I'm going to do. So the setup wizard is very, very quick, and it doesn't really set up too much. So firstly we're going to go through some settings, and the first thing I'm going to do is fix those buttons. So I'm going to press my X button to get into my options. I'm going to go down to Input, I'm going to go to Controllers, the Odin controller, which is the Thor, and for my Confirm button I'm going to change that to East, which is our A button. And then if I back out of that, it should now work properly. There we go. So the button prompts are still misaligned. I think I've had it where they do seem to correct themselves after you do a restart, but a little bit of jank there, unfortunately. So back to our appearance. So if you've used MinUI or NextUI, then you'll probably be familiar with the black and the white, the grayscale. And I quite like this look, but if you do want a bit of colour, you can set yourself an image, you can customise some colours if you want to change your colours. Well, personally, I really do like the black and white. You can change your font. You can have the OG, which is the proper MinUI font, which is a little bit chunkier. Personally, I think I'm going to go with the original font because it is nice. And then you can adjust the font size to something really, really tiny, although probably wouldn't advise it. 24 is fine. If we go into our status bar, you can show and hide different aspects of it. So you can hide your Bluetooth, you can hide your battery percentage, you can hide the clock, you can change the clock type, you can do all sorts with this. That's entirely up to you. So next, if we head over to our library, the Cannoli front end works quite unique in the way it handles folders. So we have this root folder, and this is where it's going to store all our data, and also it will create some ROM files. So you can see there's a ROM directory which is set to the Cannoli root folder, but if you've already got a ROMs folder and you want to use that, if you select that and then if you go back a level and then you scroll down, obviously depending on where you saved your ROMs this might be a little bit different, but mine are just on my root storage. So I have pointed this at my ROMs folder and it's pulled through some of my folders but not all of them, and that's because unfortunately we do have to play by Cannoli's rules and they require the folders to be named something very specific. For example, I'm missing my PlayStation 1 folder, which for me, using the ESDE folder layout, it's called PSX. However, I believe Cannoli wants it to be called PS1. So if Cannoli is a front end you want to use, if you go to your file explorer and you go over to the Cannoli folder and you check out the ROMs folder that they've populated, you'll see these are the names that it's looking for. So you can either drag your games into these folders, although if you've already set it up like this, I wouldn't advise that, or you can just rename your folders to match that. For example, PS is PlayStation rather than PSX. So if and you can see it's populated some of the missing folders here as well, which is a little bit different. So I could either drag my games into the PS folder or I could just rename that to PS. So I'm going to do that. I'll get rid of that one there. And then I'll edit the one with the games in and I'll just call it PS. Now if I head back over to Cannoli, you can see it's now there, luckily. So a little bit annoying, not something that I'm a huge fan of, but I can see why, and I kind of respect them for sticking to their guns. Once you've imported your games, if we head back to our settings, and then you go to emulation, so this is where we're going to map our cores. So you can go through and you can set these to whatever you like. So obviously if you're using standalone apps, you can make sure you set them to the correct apps. For example, for PlayStation, I'm using the standalone version of DuckStation. I didn't save. It's very annoying with these controls. Why is that not... It really does not want to... Select DuckStation there. Not too sure what's going on with that one. So you can have a little bit of a fight around with it. I will say, of the front ends, this is definitely more on my kind of least favourites. I like the visual aesthetic of it. However, I feel that in terms of kind of how intuitive it is, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's designed originally to be one of those kind of 5-game handheld front ends, but it kind of robs you of making those choices, unfortunately. We also have our retro achievements, so you can log into your retro achievements here. And then we have something called Nonnas Kitchen. Now what Nonnas Kitchen is basically it is a way to wirelessly load games to your device from your PC, from your phone. So what I'm going to do is, if I scan this QR code, and I enter the pin that's on screen, WJARF2, I am now in Nonnas Kitchen. You can access this from any browser, like I said, your laptop, iPad, PC, whatever. So from here you can select a system, you can customize wallpapers and things like that. But for example, the Famicom Disk System, or the NES, is you can upload ROMs directly to the device. You can upload save states, your BIOS files, you can add box art for the games, you can add guides, and that's kind of cool. Most front ends don't come with something like this, so this is a point in the plus category. Obviously, the guides I've been doing have all been with the merit of doing everything on device directly, so I don't know how much use this would actually be, but cool little feature nonetheless. So one of the other advantages of Cannoli is, if you have a look again at our emulation settings, you'll see that it references some internal ROMs. And basically this is because it kind of comes with its own version of RetroArch. So if I just go to, say, a Game Boy Advance game, for example, I can just boot it straight up, and this will be using the internal version that's built into Cannoli. It's designed to be like a portable system that you can put on an SD card. So you can see, boot it straight into the game. If I press my back button, rather than my normal RetroArch menu, I get the Cannoli menu. So you can save, you can load your states, you can edit settings and things like that, all from within the app itself. So this is a really good idea, and I do quite like this aspect of it. Although if you spend ages setting up your RetroArch config, then it's a little bit of a waste of time when it comes to something like this. However, very, very handy if you want something simple. You can just install this, whack all your games on using Nonnas Kitchen. It's probably one of the easiest front ends to get up and running. You don't have to worry about things like scraping artwork or anything like that, or metadata, but it is limited in other aspects. So, like I said earlier, not my favourite by any means, but it still has enough merits, and I'm sure this will appeal to a good amount of you. And that's Cannoli. So let me know in the comments if this is something that you'd be interested in, or something you've checked out. Are you a Cannoli user? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do let me know. If you like this video, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. As I always say, I've got many, many more Thor videos coming out over the coming months, so you'll want to make sure you're subscribed. Stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.